This is the third week of our Lenten message series, all about the importance of perseverance. Perseverance in our faith, in our relationship with Christ, in his church. In this season, our faith is being tested as never before. Your faith is being tested. I know my faith is being tested too. We might not like it, but testing is actually a sign of God's favor. It's true, it is. Our faith grows in the same way muscle grows, through testing and trials and exercise. God tests you because without tests and trials, you'll never mature in faith. You'll never grow. You'll never go deeper in your relationship with him. Testing prepares us for future blessing that you will not enjoy or even recognize unless and until you persevere in your connection to Christ. You know, much of the support systems in our culture for faith were fast fading, even pre-COVID. And now as a result of COVID, they're absolutely collapsing. And so through the course of this series, we're looking at how to persevere in our faith despite that challenge. And we'll be looking at 4 key factors over the course of this series that can help us out. Last week, we looked at the first one. Turns out we need connections. We need support to persevere in our faith. That seems obvious, but it is actually surprising how many people approach faith and the practice of their faith as an entirely private exercise. We were never meant to try and grow and live our faith all alone and on our own. Today we're going to look at another element, another factor that can help us out, one that's not often associated with our Catholic culture, but nevertheless is vitally important. In her book, Grit, Angela Duckworth made a whole study of perseverance. And she found that achievement of any kind doesn't come from persistence alone, even though it is accompanied with talent. Something else is needed too. It's almost immeasurable, but also unmistakable. In addition to talent and persistence, achievement requires passion, intensity, drive. And here's an interesting point that's often misunderstood. In commencement speeches every year and motivational talks everywhere, people are told to find their passion. Did you ever hear that? Find your passion. Well, Duckworth says that's a mistake. Rather than finding passion, we've got to do something else. Rather than find our passion, we need to foster it. What's the difference? Well, finding is about discovery. It's about discovering or acquiring something not actually or currently in our possession. It's out there somewhere. Fostering is about encouraging, coaching, equipping, growing what already is, what we have. It's the same for our faith. To persevere in faith, it's not a question of finding passion for it somewhere out there. God's already planted it deep down in our hearts. It's not a question of finding it, but fostering it. How? Well, to look at how, we're going to look at a passage from the Gospel of John. This is the 2nd chapter of John's Gospel, where we read, "Since the Passover of the Jews was near, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Observant Jews went to their local synagogue for the weekly observance of the Sabbath. But if they could afford it, they went to Jerusalem to the temple for the high holy days such as Passover. Passover celebrates the nation of Israel's escape from the slavery of Egypt, and it stands as one of the most holy days in the Jewish calendar. At Passover, the city of Jerusalem would swell in population with as many as 2 million pilgrims. And here in John's 2nd chapter, Jesus is one of them. Here's what happened. He found in the temple area those who sold oxen, sheep, and doves, as well as the money changers seated there. What's this all about? Well, there were, of course, vendors selling all manner of things, as you would expect in view of the heavy tourist trade. There were also money changers, because you couldn't use the Roman money in the temple. The Roman coinage bore the image of Caesar, which was considered blasphemous. So in the temple, you had to use temple coins that you could only purchase at the temple. There were also vendors selling animals. This doesn't sit well with our modern sensibilities, but the animals, birds, oxen, rams, lambs, were purchased in order to be offered in sacrifice as part of the temple worship. So aren't you glad we just asked for money? Sacrifice and worship are connected in every major religion. There's an innate understanding in humanity that when we approach God, worship includes some kind of sacrifice, some kind of offering on our part. That's what's happening here. People would sacrifice oxen, sheep, doves, depending upon their means, of course. And most often, they would purchase their offering right there at the temple with the temple coins. Both the sacrificial animals and the coins were marked up, creating huge profit margins for the vendors, especially during the high holidays. Of course, these exorbitant fees at a place of worship was a kind of extortion. So Jesus gets angry. Now, that's not an emotion we often associate with Jesus, but everybody gets angry sometimes. It's an unavoidable human emotion. It just is. Jesus got angry because he was human. The point is not about avoiding anger. We can. The point is what we do with anger, how we manage it when we experience it. Elsewhere, Scripture tells us, be angry, but don't sin. You're going to be angry, so go ahead and be angry, but don't sin. Anger is not a sin. How we act or react in anger often is, however. Jesus is angry with his commercial circus that's overwhelmed a sacred space. He's angry that this riotous scene is interrupting and distracting people's ability to worship God in spirit and truth. But most of all, he's angry at the injustice of it all, at the way simple people of faith attempting to exercise their faith are being taken advantage. And so he acts not in anger, but in righteousness. He made a whip out of cords and drove them out of the temple area with the sheep and the oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who sold doves, he said, take these out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace. Jesus takes in the scene and decides to act. And he acts with righteousness, to restore dignity, to exclude injustice. He acts with righteousness and also, it should be noted, with strength and power, powerfully driving out large animals, overturning heavy counting tables. This is an intense, intentional man, but his actions are neither reckless nor momentary. In the midst of the drama, for instance, there's a touching tenderness toward the caged doves. He neither harms nor hurts them, or even puts them in harm's way. He just asks that they be removed. And they're removed as part of his larger command to stop making my Father's house a marketplace. My Father's house. He's taking it all personally. This whole thing is personal for him, leading the disciples who are observing to recall the words of another scripture From Psalm 69, zeal for your house will consume me. Zeal is another word for passion. In the original Greek, zelos. Zelos in Greek actually means boiling over. Passion to the boiling point. He has zeal for his Father's house to the boiling point. Think about that kind of faith. Well, when she was much younger, actually when she was a little girl, my niece, Elizabeth, asked my brother what Uncle Mike does for a job, what he does for work. And my brother said, Uncle Mike does the same thing at his church that our pastor does at our church. To which my niece responded, oh, you mean he bores people? Well, as your pastor, job number one is simply not to bore you when it comes to the gospel. That would be a very bad thing for me to do, because there is nothing boring about the gospel. There is nothing boring about Jesus of Nazareth. And all our interest and urgency and energy around here to communicate this truth is behind much of what we do here. The music, the message, the ministers, the fog machine. It's all about engaging you. It's why the musicians practice for hours and hours, and the ops and tech team work all week, creating our weekend environment. It's why a team helps me out with my weekend message every single week. Why? So that whether you're at home or here, you're engaged in your faith, you're increasingly engaged in your faith, you're increasingly taking ownership for your faith with energy and enthusiasm, with passion and purpose, with zeal. That you're taking it personally. You're taking all of this personally. In fact, precisely when you're taking your faith personally, you will be fostering zeal. When you can say, my church, my ministry, my mission, you're taking it personally. That's why we talk all the time about steps. You remember, steps, serving in ministry, tithing and giving, engaging in a small group, practicing prayer and sacraments, and sharing your faith. We believe that each of these steps is crucial, critical, indispensable to growing in faith, though they're not necessarily taken in any particular order, and certainly not all at once. But all of them eventually are critical and crucial and important. And then it should be noted as well, certain steps can work especially well for certain people at certain times. For example, for some people, their passion grows when they start serving in ministry. Something clicks in connecting with other people to Christ by serving them here at church. For others, their passion grows in serving people outside the church, out on mission. For still others, the light really turns on when it comes to giving. All of this begins to get real and really means something personal when they start making a financial investment. Other people's zeal grows when they get into a small group, growing in faith together with friends in faith. We talked about that last week. And sharing faith can also actually in itself be the game changer, because sharing faith always fosters faith. I know people who love connecting others to this parish, and they're constantly on the lookout for an opportunity to do so. And obviously, dedicated time in personal prayer, full active participation here at the Eucharist are the most important ways, the most powerful ways, the most fundamental ways to grow. Zeal isn't forced or found, it's fostering. You know, if you're bored with God, or you're just bored with all this. Maybe this Lent is an opportunity for you, an opportunity to try approaching it all in a different way, a new way. For the beginner in faith, novelty is anything new, anything you haven't encountered before. But for the experienced, novelty is nuance. Think about it. If you're having trouble with daily prayer, pick a new time or place to give it a try. If you're distracted or disengaged at Mass, maybe it's time for you to come back to Ridgely Road in person. Or just change your viewing habits at home. Maybe you've struggled with your commitment to your small group. Maybe you need a new group or a different kind of group. Check out our website where you'll find tools to help you out. Maybe your group just needs a different time to meet. I know I was struggling to maintain my commitment to my group, and we changed the time that we meet, and it's working out well. If you're not very deliberate or intentional in your offering and giving, change that up and set up automatic giving, or include in your giving charities that you've not previously supported, whose work really sparks something in your heart and means something to you. Perhaps your commitment to your ministry is yet another victim of COVID, or service in general is just not now a part of your life as it once was. Take another look at all the opportunities available here. Or what about actually reaching out to an unchurched friend or family member with an invitation to come to church, and then coming with them, or watching together online? We put together an idea guide with lots and lots of ideas on new practices you can take, or nuances on old practices that you can make this Lent. And in the process, make this Lent something really special. Jesus called his friends to follow. And what he introduced them to wasn't boring. It was as far from boring as you can get. It was the greatest story ever told. Following in faith is never meant to be boring. It's an adventure. And it can be a great adventure because God is always doing something new. And right now, he might be calling you to do something new too. Perseverance is not about sheer persistence or dogged determination. Perseverance is about zeal.